So, what does it cost to rebuild a Holden 308 red motor? Well, of course, that's going to depend on what it needs and what you want to do to it. This video is about what my 308 needed and what I wanted to do to it, and how much all of that cost. If there is a theme for this rebuild, it's a retro restoration of a classic Holden 308 from the early 1970s. This build, however, is not to maximise power. This block was already bought out 60 thou over, and it had damage to one of the cylinder walls. So it's lucky, I guess, to get a new lease on life. It was really ready for the scrap heap. Now, because it's a retro build, as much as I can manage anyway, that means I'm not using any of, well, I'm going to avoid using the new aftermarket bits and pieces, you know, the Super Aero ProFlow type products. When people were rebuilding these engines in the late 70s and 80s, they were not really putting billet aluminium fuel filter and thermostat housings on them and that kind of thing. So it's going to look pretty classic when I'm done with it. Now, I don't actually have a budget for this. This is my hobby. This is how I spend my recreation time, and I'm not traveling around the world anymore, so the money is going into something a little bit more tangible. So yeah, I didn't really set a budget for this. As the costs started accumulating, I don't think I was really surprised or shocked. I guess I had somewhat of an expectation. And how I know this is that I've kept a rather detailed spreadsheet of everything that I've bought, every machining job that's been done. So I pretty much know precisely how much I have spent on this, and that is what I want to share with you. When I showed my husband, it did give him a little startle, I guess. He's obviously not worried about it because he is doing mega things for that Tirana there in the background. But yeah, I guess he didn't really think it would cost as much as it has. Now, this is not a completely stock rebuild. It's going to have a cam, and it's got an Edelbrock Performer intake going on it, and the heads, the Yellowterra heads, have got oversized valves, so it is not just a 100% classic rebuild. So that, of course, has affected the cost as well to some extent. So before I take you into the spreadsheet and we look at the total cost of all the different stages of this rebuild, do you want to have a guess? If you do, in the comments, just type what you think the total cost is for getting and restoring this 308. And then I guess we can all compare your guesses to what the actual value is at the end of the video. Okay, into the details. So I've kept a spreadsheet, and I have kept track of every single thing that I bought for this engine. There are several pages. And you might be wondering what these colours are. The green is for parts that I already have that probably just need me to clean them up and get them ready. And there are parts in yellow, which I haven't got yet, like engine oil and oil filter and that kind of stuff, which I'm not going to include in the rebuild cost because that's just running costs anyway. I may need new fuel line and hoses for when the engine finally goes into the car, the one-tonner. I haven't found an air cleaner housing yet, and I also have not found valve covers, rocker covers, so I can't include them in the cost of this rebuild because I just don't know how much I'm willing to spend on that yet. For the valve covers I want, I've seen them for like $1,400 for the set, and I don't know, just can't swallow that just yet. I have got the oil dipstick highlighted there, but I have decided to keep the one I have and just clean it up because it's really nothing wrong with it. So that's the spreadsheet that I'm working off in sharing with you the cost of all the different parts of this 308 rebuild. So this 308 came to us as an almost complete motor, and it came when Scotty bought his Tirana. It was just a bonus engine, I think, that the previous owner was going to put into the Tirana. But he has decided to go down the LS route Trust me, it's underneath that, that towel on the engine stand, and all of the parts are over there. So he's going to rebuild this LS, and that's what's going to power his UC. But anyway, because he didn't want to use this 308, it kind of planted the seed that maybe I needed a project car to make use of that 308. And I went out and I bought that HZ 1-tonner. Plenty of videos on this channel about my 1-tonner, which I love very much. Her name's Trixie. So I'm planning to do what I need to get this motor into Trixie. Of course, there's a little bit of a challenge because this is a red motor, pre-pollution, and Trixie's a 79 HZ, which is not pre-pollution. But I'm hoping I'll be able to figure out something I can do to make this work. Now, Trixie is well and truly deep in rebuild mode as well, and so I'm not really in a hurry to get this motor in her. So I'm taking my time with the rebuild. Anyway, when we got the 308, Scott decided he wanted to see if it would run, partly to test its viability, I guess, partly because he just wanted to have some fun. Fair enough. So even though I don't know how much this engine would have cost on its own, we're kind of saying about $3,000, because at the time that he got the Tirana, second-hand old 308s were kind of going for about that money, I think. So that's my base cost, is $3,000, plus the costs of what Scotty did to get it running. So it didn't come with a carby. So we got an old Quadrajet. And he rebuilt that. And then also a fuel pump, a fuel filter housing and filter, of course, a new alternator, a new coil, new distributor, new plug leads, and a new water pump, new radiator and hoses, a new fan and shroud, oil filters, coolant, all of that. So I'm not going to add any of Scotty's costs to the $3,000 base price for this, because a lot of those parts I'm reusing, and I'm just going to add them in as I describe to you through the rest of this video what all the costs have been. But he did get it running. And prove that it's a viable engine for a rebuild, we thought at the time. And yeah, here we are. Okay, so let's start with the short block. The actual block itself, like I said, it had already been bored 60 thou over and had very obvious damage to one of the cylinder walls. So it went into the machine shop, it got crack tested, that was all good. Sonic test, which I think is for cylinder wall thickness, and it also got cleaned in a hot tank. So most of the blue paint that was originally on it is no longer there now. It will be painted Holden red. Each of the cylinders needed to get sleeved, and part of the process for doing that is to fill the water jackets, quarter filled with resin, just to give it a little bit more strength. I'm not sure if I can get you in there and show you. There you go, you can see that pale colour down there. It's like a really pale jade green resin. So yeah, 8 sleeves put in, then the block has been decked and ready to start a new life back to standard bore. The crankshaft journals were already 10 thou under, and so it's but they were in pretty good condition, so it's just been linished to clean everything up and make it nice and smooth again. It also makes sense, of course, to get the motor balanced, so the machine shop also supplied me with new pistons, nice flat top standard bore pistons, and then resized the con rods and balanced the whole motor. They also provided me with rod and main bearings. So these are still in their packets. Also piston rings, and for just a bit of extra money I opted to go for ARP, main cap stud kit, and ARP bolts for the rods. I got a Power Bond harmonic balancer, not a race spec, just a street spec one. And when I paint the block, even though the machine shop did put brass Welsh plugs in, I got another set because after I paint the block I'll probably knock the old ones out, and because I'll have paint on them, and put the nice fresh ones in. So that is the short motor, and it's fair to kind of break that up into two parts, I think. The machining, $4,414, and then the cost of all the bottom end parts, $1,719. So a nice surprise in pulling this 308 apart was discovering that it had Yellowterra heads, and that means a little bit of porting and larger L34 valve sizes, which was a nice bonus. Look, most people would say on a 308, put the later model alloy VN heads on there, but I don't know, I think Yellowterra was kind of special in the day, and it's part of that resto build theme. So I kept them. They went back to the machine shop and were crack tested and cleaned. The valve seats got a multi-angle grind. The exhaust seats were modified. I think there's little inserts or something they use which hardens them for use with just straight up unleaded fuel. There was also a bit of extra machining that the heads needed because two of the valve guides didn't work. There was something to do with thin wall machining. I can't quite remember. You can see one of the guides is a little bit different there compared to the other ones, and there must have been another one on the other head. So all of that machining for these heads was $1,253. The machine shop also got valves for me. We've got EVL intake valves, stainless steel ones, and Nason exhaust valves. They also provided some, Viton valve stem seals. And I ordered a ARP head bolt kit for these heads. Now the cost of that, the valves, the stem seals and the bolts, that total to $888. As for valve train and timing, I am going to keep the Yellowterra roller rockers that were in the engine. They all look fine. They clearly need a bit of a clean, which I'll get to. They have a ratio of 1.65, and that was part of the reason why I chose the cam that I chose. It's a Crow 5761, and it's described as an aggressive street cam with a lumpy idle. The RPM range for this cam is 2,700 to 5,800 RPM. The duration is, for both the inlet and exhaust, is 230 at 50 thou. And the lift for both is 495 thou with that 1.65 rocker ratio that we have here. And the lobe separation angle is 109 degrees. So I have test fit the cam. Everything seemed to go in nicely, which was great. The Crow cam kit that I got, it also came with a bunch of other things as well. The timing chain set, and lifters, springs, retainers and locks, and also push rods. We already know the valves and the valve guides and seals came from the machine shop. The timing cover that was on the 308 is just a KC aftermarket alloy timing cover. It was pretty grotty and I had a pretty good go at cleaning it up. I'm happy enough with that. I did get a new seal for the crank, and I reckon I'm going to reuse that. I'll spend a bit of time on the gasket surface just to make sure that that's really as flat as it can be. I'm just hoping that that will seal, but yeah, I didn't want to spend the $400 and something to get another timing cover if this one can still work. I have got new bolts for it. It seems like most of the aftermarket kits have the Allen head bolt, and to me that's just not retro, so I did find from Rare Spares just the standard, the 6-point head bolt. So that kit's on its way. So the cost for valve train and timing is $1,627. Now, I mentioned before, valve covers, I just haven't found ones that I want yet. I may end up defaulting back to the standard ones and painting them Holden red, or finding some chrome ones. I just think that because this engine is going to have a little bit of street tough about it, finned alloy valve covers would look brilliant. But yeah, haven't found any yet. As for air and fuel, when Scotty was getting the 308 running, he got this Quadrajet from a wrecker and put a kit through it. So I'm going to reuse that, but it clearly needs a bit of a clean-up. I'm not sure how nice and pretty I can make it, but not going to be able to see much of it anyway under the air cleaner. The Edelbrock Performer was originally on the engine, that's what it came with, and that has come up super nice after bead blasting at the machine shop. So that was $60 well spent, I reckon. The Quadrajet does have a little fuel filter in the back of it. I don't think there's a filter in it at the moment, and it's probably going to be wiser for me just to turn a blind eye to my avoidance of aftermarket billet products and stick with an inline fuel filter housing. This one's very pretty anyway. I don't have to have that showing, do I? I can make it look a little bit kind of subtle. The fuel pump, thankfully, Scotty got a new mechanical fuel pump, which is great. That sort of fits with my retro theme closely enough. And these other bits are just a proper bolt head for the intake and other bits for the Quadrajet. Accelerator spring. Now the air cleaner, I haven't decided on one yet. I think it's going to have to kind of be in the same family as whatever valve or rocker covers I end up with. But that filter was new when Scotty did the run-in, and he had just run it inside the air cleaner that was originally on the engine, but it is really rusty and I don't think I'd be able to clean it up well anyway. Chrome's not my favourite finish in an engine bay. Those original valve covers, they've got the 308 stamped in the top of them. They're chrome as well, and they're in worse condition even than that air cleaner. So yeah, not my favourite. If I have to go down that way, I just will, but kind of an alloy look is more what I would prefer. So that's fuel and air, and what we've spent has totaled to $650. I guess for the oil system, I did get a new sump pan. It's just very stock, unpainted, and I will paint that myself. I also have bought a new drain plug for it and a new bolt set for it as well, but they're on the way. The oil pump, I'm going to pull apart and clean up and just get it ready. I think packing it with Vaseline is one of the things to do to help it prime for the first time. It did need a new drive gear, which I got Crocam's advice on which one to get, and thankfully they have one just to suit the new cam, but I'm going to use the shaft. Again, doesn't seem to be anything wrong with that. This is the original oil pickup as well, and I was going to get another one just to be safe. Even though there doesn't appear to be anything wrong with this, I'm going to clean this with kerosene instead, because the only aftermarket ones I could find just didn't have that retro appeal about them. And really, this is not showing any damage anywhere. Like that mesh there is in really good condition. So yeah, it's just going to get a soak in kerosene. For the dipstick, it's all fine. The handle's a little bit corroded, so I don't know, might clean that up a bit and paint just the handle. And also the dipstick tube, a little bit of surface rust, so I'll clean that up and give it a paint as well. So for what I'm spending on the oil system, $283. Onto the cooling system. So Scotty did get flex fan, water pump, thermostat, and also way up there on the top of that orange pallet racking is a brand new radiator as well, and hoses. Now the thermostat housing, this was on the engine already, and I also worked a bit of magic and cleaned that up to my satisfaction, so I may reuse that as well. Scotty seems to think that it might have been leaking, so I want to just double check that gasket surface and make sure it's nice and flat. The radiator also, well, you might have noticed that it's on a frame up there, which we were using as part of our engine run stand setup. So there's a shroud on that radiator as well, so I'll be reusing that also. So yeah, cost of the cooling system, including that radiator, is $1,130. So, ignition system. We have a battery that Scotty got to get it running to start with. The starter motor that was already on it, which seemed to be working just fine, so I'm going to just clean it up really. Bought a set of plugs for it. It only ran for a short period of time on the run stand, so I'll clean those plugs up and reuse them. Got new leads. I think it didn't have a complete set of leads when it came, if I remember correctly, or some of them were damaged. I'm not a fan of blue leads on this engine, but at least to get it going and run the cam in, that's not going to be an issue. I did say that I wasn't going to go down the Super ProFlow type aftermarket products, but Scotty had already bought this ProFlow coil, so I'll use that, and the ProFlow distributor as well, so that's going to go in. Couple of senders that we were using on the run stand actually for oil pressure and coolant temperature, and he also got a new alternator as well, which of course I'll reuse. There are a bunch of other bits in this tote here. Again, we were using this on the run stand, which is like a set of gauges and battery cables and other bits of wiring. I don't know, I may actually be able to use those gauges inside the tonner, just on an extra little, well, just on a fascia like that really, hanging underneath the dash, unless Scotty wants to keep this set up for running in other engines, the LS as one example, and I'll still probably go ahead and get something like that anyway for those extra gauges that the one tonner does not have in its standard dash. So that's the electrical system, and all of that added up to $1,611. Finally, we have assembly, those new Welsh plugs that I mentioned. I've got an oil gallery cleaning kit, I guess you'd call it, plaster gauge for main bearing clearance, and a complete engine gasket set. Now, I have chosen to stick with a rope rear main seal, which is kind of hiding down in there. Not everyone agrees with that. These blocks can be machined to take a new neoprene seal, but I don't know, I want to live dangerously and go the old way. Hopefully that'll work out. And these are Felpro head gaskets that this kit comes with as well. There will be engine oil, there will be coolant, there will be an oil filter and a bunch of other bits and pieces that will be associated with getting this thing fired up and running. But those other costs, again, they're mostly just costs that any engine's going to require, so I'm not really including them in the cost of this build. But for these items here, $315. I'm not including exhaust or transmission at this point. I do have an old Trimatic that I will get tested and reconditioned, and I would like a full manual valve body in that as well. It's a little bit down the track now. So everything I've shared with you now, I'm considering the cost of the rebuild. Did you keep a running total? And did you end up with $16,891? That's what it's been. Now, I don't know if that's a lot. It sounds like a lot, but I don't care because it's just been so much fun since the moment I took ownership of this 308 through to this point where I'm now starting to get super excited about assembling it. We're going to shortly, I'll give it a really good wash and get my friend Gary, Holden mechanic and petrol head extraordinaire, to help me with figuring out how to test valve clearances and then just start assembling it. And that'll probably be in a future video where we get it on the run stand and run this wonderful cam in. I cannot wait to hear it. By then I'll need to have headers at least for it. So that's probably still a little ways off. In any case, I hope that this video has been at least a little bit informative about what it can cost to rebuild an old engine, bring it back from the dead, so to speak. If it hasn't been informative, I hope it's somehow been entertaining in watching somebody willingly spend the better part of $17,000 on an old lump of iron. Anyway, stay tuned and you too will see this thing come back to life.